All right, so let's start with number one. It says choose the sentence with no errors in spelling. So we're looking, and if you go through every single one of these, it's gonna have the bold no errors. All right, and it says I like to put cookies or chocolate milk in my milkshakes. So each and every one of these sentences say the exact same thing. So what you want to do is go through the first letter and just go all the way down to see what the changes are. So if I go down I, the first letter is capitalized, so there's no problem there. If I look at like, all of these are spelled correctly. To, all these are spelled correctly. Put, all of these are spelled correctly. Cookies, every single one of these is spelled correctly. Or, all of these are spelled correctly. Chocolate, here we have chocolate, 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 chocolate. So out of all of these, this one's incorrect. So here we're at chocolate. Here we're at syrup, and we have 3 different syrup spellings here. Now I'm just going to go over here. We have in my milkshakes. Every single one of these are spelled correctly. So if we go back to syrup, this one has 2 R's. This one's incorrect. This one has syrup, or the OP. This is incorrect. So then the only one we're left with is A. Alright, so this one says click on the sentence that is correctly punctuated. Punctuated, we're looking at commas, periods, and question marks. And if you remember our cups that we learned at the beginning of the year, C is capitalization, U is usage, P is punctuation. So that could be quotation marks and all of that good stuff. So anyway, this first sentence says, whales are known to be the largest living animals in the world. Everything is fine. Punctuation-wise, there's a period. Let's look at this one. It says the blue whale is the largest existing whale, weighing 130 tons and measuring 115 feet in length. So the only problem with this sentence is, so the 2 punctuation marks are the comma and this period. There's no need for this comma to be here because everything after it is not a complete sentence. I cannot say measuring 115 feet in length as a complete sentence. And if you remember, we learned about compound sentences. It has to be after this comma, there has to be a complete sentence afterwards. So if we take out the and say measuring 115 feet in length, again, it is not a complete sentence. So it looks like we have a problem here and I cannot delete it. This next sentence says, imagine the length of approximately 3 school buses parked end to end and you will have the size of a whale. So the only decimal that you have here, I'm sorry, decimal, the only punctuation mark that you have is this period. But there is a problem. We do need a comma here at the end of end because everything in front of this mark right here is a complete sentence and everything after it is a complete sentence. So on both sides of this and should be a complete sentence, which means there should be a comma right here. This next one says blue whales are known to be larger than any dinosaur that lived long years ago. And in this sentence, you cannot have a comma here. It's just inappropriately thrown in there. So out of all of these, it says click on the sentence that is correctly punctuated. The only one that's correctly punctuated is the first one. The next one says click on the 2 sentences that are correctly punctuated. So it says, it was a cloudy, stormy afternoon. This is not correctly punctuated because there needs to be a comma in between here because we have 2 adjectives. And when you have 2 adjectives describing the afternoon, you need a comma there. So that is not correct. Here it says, two children walked along a twisty, narrow country road. Again, we have two adjectives that do not have a comma in between. So this one is incorrect, but remember, we're looking for the ones that are punctuated correctly. This next one says, suddenly, a tall woman with black hair and brown eyes ran up to the children. This one is correctly punctuated. If you remember, we learned about complex sentences. And so this is one of those fragments. And it has a little comma, so it's not a complete sentence. So it has a comma at the end. And everything at the end of this comma is a complete sentence. A tall woman with black hair and brown eyes ran up to the children. So that's one. The children were surprised to see that it was their mother. This comma does not belong there, so that is not correct. This next one, it says she urged the children to hurry up. These commas do not need to be here, so that is incorrect. This next one says she explained that a cold driving rain was coming. Again, we have two adjectives here. And again, if there are two adjectives, there need to be commas in between them. So that one is not punctuated correctly. And the last one says the children quickly headed toward their warm, dry house. So this one is punctuated correctly because we have warm, which is an adjective, and dry, which is an adjective, and they have the comma in between. So these are the only two that are punctuated correctly. Now remember, when you're taking a test, on the real test, if it says two correct sentences, if you find one and don't find the other one, it is incorrect. They want you to be able to find both. Right, so number 4 says a student wrote a sentence that contains errors in punctuation. So again, we're looking at periods, commas, exclamation marks, question marks, commas, and all that stuff. Click to highlight the two words that should be followed by a comma. So there are two words that should have a comma afterwards. So on tests like this, it says, although the teacher planned a fun creative lesson using technology, the internet connection was down that day. So I see two adjectives here, and these two adjectives should have a comma in between, which means if the comma is here, following means after. So it says highlight the two words that should have a comma after, if that makes any sense. So this is this word that should have the comma after, because followed means after. And after this whole entire fragment, there should be a comma after technology, because the complete sentence starts here. And this is the fragment. Because remember, if you remember, it said, although the teacher planned a fun, creative lesson using technology, if we put the period here, we're going to wonder, well, what happened when the teacher planned a fun, creative lesson using technology? And it says right here what happened when the teacher did plan it. I did answer that right. Okay. So this next one says select two sentences that are correctly punctuated. It says Robert Frost, a famous American poet, wrote a poem for President John F. Kennedy's presidential inauguration in 1961. Now, these two are correct. Well, this one is definitely correctly punctuated, because when you have two commas, these commas here are just like parentheses. It's just giving extra information. So if I took out this extra information, everything else would still make sense. So I'm gonna really quick try to highlight it if it will let me. It won't let me. Yeah, it won't let me highlight. No, that's not what I want to do. Well, I guess I could. So if I highlight, blah, it won't let me. All right, so yeah, this is correctly punctuated. Again, this piece right here, all of this is extra information. And when we add extra information, we just surround it with commas. So if I read this, it says Robert Frost wrote a poem for President John F. Kennedy, and everything else after, and it still makes sense. All right, so this one says, Frost spent the first 10 years of his life in San Francisco, California. These commas don't need to be here. This is not extra information. And if you remember, cities and states do need to have commas in between it. So this is fine, but these are not. The next one says, after several years as a teacher, Frost moved to New England. He wrote many poems there and lived on a farm. So the problem here is there should be a period here. And yeah, something's wrong with this sentence. We have two complete sentences here. And yeah, so this is incorrect here. Here it says he published his first book of poems at the age of 40. We cannot put a comma here. We don't say he published his first book of poems at the age of 40. No, we just say, we take this comma out and we just say he published his first book of poems at the age of 40, period. This next one says he won the Pulitzer Prize 4 times. He was proud of that accomplishment. This should be a period, and this should be 2 separate sentences, so this is not correct. And the last one says, one of Frost's most favorite poems, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, is often studied in school. So here we have a comma, and here we have a comma. Again, this is extra information. Just like this top one has extra information. Again, if we take out this extra information, it will still make sense. So if I just said one of Frost's most famous poems is often studied in school, this is still a complete sentence. And then if I put parentheses here, again, that would be extra information. So this one is correct. All right, so this next one, number 6, says, choose the sentence that is correctly punctuated. The sun, which is very strong today, will burn you. Put on some sunblock. This does not need a comma here. The sun, which is very strong today, will burn you. So put on some sunblock. This is also not properly punctuated. If I say the sun, I could put a comma here. This extra information, if you remember on the number 5, this would be a comma and this would be a comma. And if I take out this extra information here, the sun will burn you, would still be a sentence. So here, there needs to be a comma here, and that comma is missing. So this is not correctly punctuated. This one, the sun, which is very strong today. So again, these two are the only two that are correctly punctuated with the parentheses. Will burn you, so put on some sunblock. So this is a conjunction. I don't know if you remember the and, but, or, so, then, those kinds of words. This is a compound sentence. So we have a complete sentence on both sides of this so. The sun will burn you, and then on the other side, put on some sunblock. Both of those are complete sentences. And then the last one, it says the sun, which is very strong today, will burn you, so put on some sunblock. This is not extra information. It goes with the sentence. We cannot put this in parentheses. So the only one that's correct is C. Number 7 says choose the sentence with the correct capitalization. So again, if we do this like we did number 1, each of these say exactly the same thing. We need to see which one has the right capitalization. So out of all these does, the only one that's not properly punctuated is this one, because the first sentence, or the first word in every sentence, should always have a capital letter. So now we're left with these. The only way to get to the top. Again, we're not looking at punctuation marks, so this is not important. Said Tom. So I can look at this one, and said is not supposed to be capitalized, but Tom is. So I'm going to cross that out. Now I'm left with these two. So said Tom is by aircraft. Now, since these two pieces here are supposed to finish each other, this is not a complete sentence, is by aircraft. So we can't pick this one. This one is continuing this. And this is something that authors do. They don't say the only way to get to the top is by aircraft, said Tom. So when they want to be creative, then they say the only way to get to the top, said Tom, is by aircraft, and they're dividing this sentence. This is the correct one. And this one is not, because this I does not need to be capitalized. All right, this next one, number 8, says choose the sentence with the correct capitalization. Now again, we're going to go all the way through like this. The looks fine. Mother. Mother does not need to be capitalized at all. So we can cross these two out. Mother is not a proper, like if it says mother's name, like if it was mother Brandy or mother Ann or something like that, then this would have to be capitalized, but it's not. It's just mother. Mother is a common noun. So we're left with these two. So mother, adored, her, daughters, performance, and again we're looking for capitalization here. In, Romeo, and Juliet. Now Romeo and Juliet are names, so these need to be capitalized, but and does not need to be capitalized. So this one is incorrect. Number 9 says a student is writing a story for class. Read the sentences from her story and answer the question that follows. So it says, my friend Jessica and I were excited about the upcoming school winter dance to be held next week. We planned to meet at the nearby mall on Friday around 4 o'clock to do some shopping. While we shop at our favorite clothing store, Jessica saw her friend Alicia. She decides to shop with Alicia instead of me. I was so disappointed that I walked home without buying anything. I cannot believe I missed my 6th grade winter dance because I didn't have anything new to wear. So out of all of these, we need to look very carefully at these verbs here, and it says choose one way. The underlined words could be changed to keep the verb tense the same. So if this is a story that has happened already, And I can tell that this dance has happened already. Because it says excited. Uh, yeah. Oh, disappointed. And I think that's all we have here. Battery's about to die. It says, so choose one way. So all of these need to be past tense. We planned to meet. While we shopped, she decided. I was so disappointed that I walked. I cannot believe I missed. So the only one that has all of these past tense is this one. The next one says, choose the sentence that has no errors in grammar usage. Okay, so again, we're going to look at all of these up and down, up and down. So Siberian Huskies is fine. Is and are. So when we're talking about more than one Siberian Husky, okay, so if we say it, this is not it. If this was it, like one, it would be it is. If we can say they, because there's more than one, then we say they are, not they is, because this is more than one. And if we say they is, it's incorrect. So these two, I'm gonna close because that's not correct English, or cross out. So anyway, they, the Siberian Huskies, they are known for their thick, furry coat. So something's wrong here. One of these is wrong, and I don't know if you remember, but I taught you guys the difference between there and there. This there is talking about a position, like go over there, and this is talking about object or things or people. And since these are things, living things, we're saying they are known for their thick furry coats, which help keep them warm in the winter. So the only one that is correct is C. Okay, so number 11 says a student is writing a report for class. She needs to correct 3 grammar usage mistakes in her draft. Read the draft from her report and complete the task that follows. So so it says click the 3 sentences that contain grammar mistakes that the student needs to correct. And let's look at the first sentence. Pretty long sentence. Some historians mistakenly give credit to Italian inventor Leonardo da Vinci or amateur English scientist William Bourne for creating the first submarine. So there's no problem here. A comma is not necessary here because we're talking about 2 different people. The next sentence says, however, Da Vinci and Bourne only created drawings of ships designed to operate underwater, and neither man actually built the working submarine. So this is grammar mistakes. Okay, sorry, we're not looking at commas. So grammar mistakes, Da Vinci and Bourne only created drawings of ships designed to operate underwater, and neither man actually built the war. Okay, so then there's nothing wrong there. The credit for building the first successful underwater craft belongs to Cornelius Drebbel, a court inventor for James I of England. There is no grammar problem here, but just, yeah. The next one says, in 1620, Drebbel builds the first known submarine, and witnesses observed the ship make an underwater journey down the Thames River. So, since we're talking about something that happened in 1620, he's not building it right now. If it's happening right now, and I say, oh well, he he builds this he builds this ship. It's happening at the moment. But since it already happened, it should say Drebbel built the first known submarine. Alright, so that's the first grammar mistake. The next one says, eyewitness accounts claim King James I himself took an underwater ride in Drebbel's invention, and the monarch praised the shipbuilder. So we don't say himself, we say himself. So that's the second problem. The next one, it says Drebbel constructed a total of 3 submarines, and his final model remained underwater for 3 hours while carrying 16 passengers. So there are no errors here, or grammar errors. The next one says, however, a few modern experts have questioned whether Drebbel's submarines actually existed. There's no problem there either. Here in 2001, an English boat builder set out to build a recreation of one of Drebbel's submarines. There is no problem there. The next one, using the materials and methods with which Drebbel worked, the modern day builder were able to create a working version of the submarine. So the problem is in here. And if we're talking about the person, he, the modern day builder is this guy. So if we say he were able, we can't say he were able to create. We are supposed to say he was able to, because it's talking about the builder, and the builder is one guy and one guy is he. He was able to create a working version of the submarine. And those are the 3 mistakes. And we can read the last one just because. Tests of the underwater craft revealed Drebbel's design did work. Alright, next one. A student is writing an informational article for history class. Read the draft of the article and the directions that follow. Click on 2 sentences that have errors in grammar usage. So again, grammar has something to do with correct English. So during the Revolutionary War, many women worked at home, in hospitals, or in other support roles. So there's nothing wrong there. Oops, wrong one. However, Deborah Sampson chose to help the fight for American independence in a different way. No problem there. Deborah, at the age of 21, used the false name of Robert Shirtliff to enlist in George Washington's Continental Army. No problem here. She disguised herself by cutting her hair and wearing men's clothes. No problem there. During the time she served under Washington's command, Deborah received 4 wounds. No problem there. 1 wound was from a sword cut to her head, and another came from a bullet piercing her thigh. No problem there. Eventually, a doctor discovers her true identity. The problem here is this should say the doctor discovered her true identity because it happened before, or it was past tense. The next one says, though Deborah had lied about whom she was, the Army general gave her an honorable discharge. So the problem is here because Deborah had lied about who she was, not whom she was. Let's read the next one anyway. Several years after the end of the war, Deborah toured the new nation to give speeches about her experience as a soldier. So the only 2 grammar use problems is this. It should say discovered, and it should say who and not whom.